JF Stretford, Paddock, this is the Tier 1 Transfer Podcast. Joining me, not as always, but occasionally, is my co-host Joe Smith, stepping in for Ronaldo Brown.
Great to be here, Jay. Thank you for having me.
It's almost becoming a regular thing, isn't it?
Almost, yeah.
No Ronaldo. Don't worry though, Ronaldo fans. He will be back soon.
Yeah.
So both of you can calm down. Joining us also today is renowned journalist Sam Pilger, who's a writer for Forbes, FourFourTwo, The Athletic. He's written several Manchester United books, and he's my favourite type of journalist because he's a United fan as well. How are we doing, Sam? You okay?
Yeah, good. Very well, thanks, Joe.
Good. Thanks for coming on the channel again. You've been on the channel a few times. It's always great to catch up with you. We'll start with the obvious one. I say the obvious one, but there's several obvious United stories. But one of the most obvious ones recently has been Raphael Varane. Now, we'll say at the time of recording, he hasn't signed for Manchester United. Nope. What's the latest with him? What's the sort of the biggest update you can give us with Raphael Varane's move to Manchester United?
Yeah, sure. It's my understanding, my very fresh and recent understanding, that there's probably a note of caution to it. It's certainly not a done deal yet. It's certainly not a done deal like Jadon Sancho, and I think people are thinking it's done and moving on to who's not. Certainly, my understanding, that's not the case. The personal terms haven't been agreed with him yet. I think there's somebody in the reports that they've been agreed and they're all sorted. They haven't been, is what I believe. They're close. They don't think that will be a problem. But obviously he's 28. He's leaving Real Madrid. This is his, probably last big contract. And obviously he wants to make a lot of money from it. But yeah, personal terms haven't been agreed. And until they are, then negotiations with Real Madrid won't start and won't proceed. There's optimism there, though, that Real Madrid will, with a year left on his contract, will look to cash in, will want to sell him, and will be realistic about what they can achieve for him. So there is guarded optimism that both the personal terms and the deal with Real Madrid can be done. The player wants to come, which seems to be the most, the biggest hurdle, really, that it gets nowhere if that's not the case. But from my understanding, it certainly won't be announced this week, and there is still some way to go.
Even though I'm a little bit cautious to say this, but I'll do it anyway. Yeah. How much of a difference do you think Varane could make to Manchester United if he does arrive at the club?
Oh, I think huge. I mean, I think it's the dream signing for everyone, isn't it, really, as a centre-back partner for Harry Maguire. Harry Maguire, who I'm delighted is getting the belated respect he deserves. There's always a begrudging respect there, but, World Cup team of the tournament, Euros team of the tournament, deservedly so. I mean, England were transformed under him, and I thought he was brilliant. People look at his faults and so on, but I think he's a fantastic centre back. But I think that United needed an experienced partner next to him. I think getting in a younger player, and there were a lot of other centre backs that they were looking at. You're looking at buying someone 22, 23, and you're waiting for their peak, and they're waiting for them to develop and get used to the Premier League. At 28, Varane, World Cup winner, 10 years with Real Madrid. They expect it to be immediate, and Varane and Maguire as a partnership would be fantastic. So I think there was a sort of fatalism about United fans thinking, well, Varane would be my number one choice, but realistically, who are we going to get? No, not many people leave Real Madrid at 28, having won Champions Leagues and World Cups. So I think it would, be a fantastic signing.
Yeah, definitely a fantastic sign. That point about you don't usually get people out of their prime from Real Madrid, do you? Marcus Rashford's someone that you've written a lot about, and he sort of had a bit of negative press recently. We'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. But what have you made of his sort of growth on and off the pitch? Because he's becoming a lot more than just a footballer, hasn't he, in the last sort of 18 months or so?
He is. I mean, as somebody who studied American history many years ago at university, and the civil rights movement, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and grew to love Muhammad Ali. It's incredible to see a Manchester United player have such an impact. Of course, I wouldn't compare it to the Civil Rights Movement, Dr. King, but it is amazing more so when you look at Muhammad Ali and what he did. And for years and years and years, sportsmen and footballers were so cowed and just wouldn't say anything. That he is coming out, along with someone like Tyrone Mings as well, and wants to say something. It is absolutely brilliant, and it's not just spouting off for the sake of it. It's making a change to government policy, getting children fed during school holidays. It's absolutely brilliant. So the fact, I think you'd love him if he played for Liverpool or City or whoever, just because of his social activism, what he represents. The fact that he's a Manchester lad, plays for Manchester United, is nowhere near the peak of his career. And despite everybody saying, "Oh, concentrate on your football, you're a footballer first," the fact that with injuries, he is still a brilliant footballer. He's one of United's best players last year, and his goals and assists are incredible. He's a really special player. And if you look at how, bland somebody like a generation earlier player I loved and a person I interviewed several times, David Beckham, which was, just an advertising board and endorsed products and so on, but said nothing about anything controversial. Although feeding kids is not controversial, really. Shouldn't be. 20 years on, to see this Manchester lad, taking people on is just fantastic. I've loved it.
You mentioned there about feeding the kids not being controversial, but he has been getting a little bit of negative press today from certain outlets. What do you sort of make of that when you see what, to me, I mean, obviously give us your opinion. To me, just seems like they've seen someone that they don't like because he's challenging the authority and he's challenging the sort of status quo of things. So we're going to try and find a problem with what he's doing, rather than there's a genuine thing here to report on. It's just a sort of a hit piece. And what do you make of that when you see, like you said, what's something that should be so sort of, we can all agree on about trying to feed kids that need food, and all of a sudden he's now getting negative attention that is seemingly just for doing something that's good?
Well, I mean, sadly, it's inevitable, really. He's embarrassed the Prime Minister, he's embarrassed the government, he's embarrassed the Conservative Party. Many of them, when it was put to a vote, voted against extending the school meals into the holidays during the pandemic. So it's inevitable that the right-wing machine swings into action with the Daily Mail and the Spectator. I don't know. I know he flagged up this Spectator piece. I don't know whether it actually ran in the end or whether it was dropped because he got in there first. But I mean, he's doing something right. That's what he should say. And I know it's almost a cliche. They only boo the good players in the football, but in the political environment, if there's a hit job on you, you're doing something right, and he should really see that as a badge of honour, really.
Completely agree. Moving on to Paul Pogba. We've not spoke about him for a good few hours on the channel.
Couple of minutes.
Yeah. What do you think the next step is with him? Because there's talk this morning, I've read somewhere that he could be going to PSG. He's a player that's always sort of been constantly linked with a move away, going back to when he was first here in 2011. What do you think is going to happen with Paul Pogba this summer? Do you think he is going to move on?
In short, I don't know. I do know what's going on in the background, but I don't know whether that's going to lead. I think PSG are interested. My understanding is that Real Madrid and Juventus would like him, but can't afford his wages or his fee that it would take this summer. That's a non-starter. If he's going to go anywhere, it's PSG. But I think he's certainly open to staying at United. United want him to stay. I think there would be a new contract there for him. They certainly want him to stay. There's no doubt about that. He's not a troublesome influence. He's a great presence at the training ground, in the team. He'd looked happy, improved the team. They want him to stay, but he's in a powerful position. He's got a year left on his contract. And so, I mean, my one note, of course, should PSG have the glamour, of course, Neymar and Mbappe and being in Paris, but it's playing in the French league, and he's 28 as well. He's coming to the peak years of his career. And really, you either want to be, playing the Liga or the Premier League. I think the very best players now want to be in the Premier League. If you're not playing for Real Madrid or Barcelona, you want to be in the Premier League. I suppose PSG might be an exception to that, but PSG is about the Champions League. That's what they want to win. I know they didn't win the French league last year, but they win that routinely. And where's the challenge in that? I suppose it might be fun to play with Neymar. I'm sort of cancelling out my own arguments. I know it might be fun to play with Neymar, but I just think that someone of that ego and achievement, what does a French title mean at PSG? Very little. What would winning the Premier League mean to Paul Pogba, having never won it before and having, United now having not won it for what would be 9 years next year if they win it. So, I know it's how Sir Alex Ferguson sold the club to players in the late 80s. I think when he was, and show my age here, he was trying to scout Trevor Stephen, who was such a good England player at Everton. He was saying, yeah, you can win a title at Everton, but imagine what a title win here at Manchester United would mean. And I think he was right then, and it's an ego from United players and staff. But, those players that won the title in 92, 93, who did end the 26-year drought, was enormous and worth 5 times the titles of, that you might win in other countries, in other leagues. But, money talks. PSG might offer him a huge bag of riches. I don't. My understanding is this is up in the air. It really is up in the air, which I suppose is a good thing for United, because 6-7 months ago his agent Raiola said it was over. I don't think it's over by any means. I think Pogba would be very happy to stay at United, but and I think this influences United's transfer policy as well. My understanding is if Pogba stays, it's unlikely they will sign another midfielder. If he goes, they certainly will.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, and I get, you don't know. But what does your gut tell you? What do you think, Sam? Just like, no, I know that you don't know for a fact. It's like, do you have the feeling that he is going to stay, or do you just, do you think this could be the end of him?
You know what, Mike? I've got as you said, and I've got a United supporting gut, so you know how it is. It's the heart rules the head every time, doesn't it? So, I want him to stay. I think he was fantastic towards the end. I think, a year ago, if we were having this conversation a year ago or something, you'd think, well, what's the fuss? He hasn't really done it at United, but I think that's probably his best. He had that season where he scored 16 goals or something, but loads were penalties, and they sort of flattered him slightly. But last year, he was brilliant. The last minute winner or the late winner at Fulham, just changing games, a match winner. And you saw his influence he could have, and then at Euros as well. So I think that, it's money, isn't it? It's money talks, it's agents and so on. So it doesn't matter what my gut says. If you want me to go out on a limb, and you do, and I hate people who don't answer questions, I would say he would stay. But I'm a hostage to fortune on that.
Listen, you're talking like us. We say the exact same thing you say. It's that whole thing of we'd prefer it if he stayed, and I think sometimes your heart does really hurt. Just quickly, you mentioned there about if he does stay, you don't see another midfielder sort of coming in. Do you think I know there's a lot of ifs and buts here, but if he goes, do you see Eduardo Camavinga? Is he a possible target for Manchester United? Because there's been a lot of noise around him recently.
Yeah, my understanding on that, there has been a lot of noise. I think United are interested, without a doubt. Their sense is, though, he's more fixed on Spain. He obviously, when you say Spain, that obviously means Real Madrid, Barcelona, or maybe Atletico, I don't know. But yeah, you say Spain, you don't mean he wants to play for Alaves. I think he's interested in Barcelona, Real Madrid. Obviously, he'll be available on a free next year. So I think United are interested. If they could do a deal, they would. But that's the sense they've got. That's what I'm hearing. That he might come to United, but they're not his first choice.
That's a bit of a shame, isn't it?
Well, no, never mind.
Yeah, Donny van der Beek, someone who is another one that gets mentioned all the time. He's only been here a year. My kind of thoughts on him is, if we want depth, if we want to be able to win a league, we need good people coming in. If Pogba gets injured or Bruno or someone like that. But seems like a lot of people have written him off already, or people feel sorry for him almost. What are your thoughts on van der Beek, and do you think he's part of Ollie's plans for next season?
I think I'm not sure. I think if United could raise some money for him, they might. I think any player has to be trusted by their manager, doesn't it? You have to trust him. It just does not look like Solskjaer trusts him at all. And Europa League final. I don't have the stats to hand. I should have done my research. And how often he was an unused sub, how often he came on for 10 minutes, how often United needed to win a game or needed a goal or needed a spark, and he just sat there. Europa League final, he didn't come on. So that tells you, and a lot of people did come on in that final. I mean, I know Mata and James came on late to take penalties, but he just does not trust him. He doesn't, he trusts Scott McTominay and Fred, Victor Lindelof, players who you would say arguably not as good as Van der Beek, but he just does not trust him. So, that's a big leap. I know the history of the Premier League or any football is littered with examples of players who have poor first seasons, slow start seasons. He's playing for a good Ajax team, but the Dutch league is not the Premier League. And then they come good. There's a lot of players who have slow starts and then come really good. So it's not beyond him whatsoever. Maybe not playing the Euros. Maybe playing the Euros would have got his confidence going. Obviously, he missed that with injury. Maybe that gives him a clear break and he can come back firing. But, I just think, actions speak louder than words, and Solskjaer's actions last year were just not to use him, which begs the question, why was 35 million up to 40 million pounds spent on him? Looked good as a squad player, but then wasn't even used as a squad player, barely. So, I'm not too optimistic about that, his future.
In there about, why was that money spent on him? Why do you think that money was spent on him? Because it almost seemed like it was like, kind of piecing it together backwards after we've seen him, make a few appearances, but not, like I said, come on with a lot of sort of expectation. He's not the game changer that we bring on. It almost looked like a sort of exercise in how quickly United could get a transfer done, because it was basically done in a weekend, wasn't it? From those big rumours to it being done on the Monday. Why do you think it was almost like it wasn't Ollie's choice, or something else was going on there? Because such a strange transfer, such an un-United transfer, the way it unfolded, and then for him to barely play suggests like there's something else going on.
Yeah, I wish I had the absolute answer. I don't. It is a strange. I do think it was Solskjaer's buy. I think at other clubs, managers often are given players. I don't think that's the case with Solskjaer. Obviously there's more of a structure behind him now, but that wasn't the case a year ago. No, I don't. And, and also the Van der Beek is not, a few years earlier, maybe you could have said that with Angel Di Maria and Radamel Falcao, all the glamour, they were grabbed, and maybe they were more club signings than Louis van Gaal. We can get these players, we must get them. And Van Gaal, who was just arrived that summer, late from the World Cup with the Netherlands, maybe thought, these are good players, okay. Maybe they weren't his first choices. With Van der Beek, he's not a glamour player. He's not going to sell shirts. He's not going to sell season tickets or get people excited. People thought, that's a good, solid buy. Yeah, I like that. And the fact that he was all destined to go to Real Madrid, which he was, the deal to Real Madrid was done in the spring. The pandemic hits football in March, April. The plug's pulled. And United pounced where they thought, we like this player, but he's going to Madrid. And, it must be one of those that on the training pitch, or the boy's attitude, or the something the manager sees or doesn't see in him, doesn't like, he just was not given a chance. And he got a few chances, but very, very few. And, you look at that 35 million, you imagine if that had been spent on a centre-back last year, or, you top it up with a little bit. You think last year's market, really, I wrote a piece during the summer, with Balestri, Ahmad, Cavani, Van der Beek, and I'm forgetting someone here that was five. Sorry?
Tellez,
yeah, there you go. But yeah, easily forgettable, unfortunately. You think, that's a pretty poor transfer window, really. Cavani came good. At the point I wrote the piece, Cavani hadn't. Cavani came good, but that's 5 players. Balestri went out on loan. Ahmad was underused. Tellez motivated, sure, but became a squad player, didn't really make an impact. And Van der Beek did nothing at all. So if you look at last summer, it was a bit an extra as a disappointment. I know United rose from 3rd to 2nd, but it was a lot. A lot of money spent on Van der Beek and Ahmad. You're looking potentially 70 million, and you look at the impact they made last year, which was zero almost.
We've had a lot of conversations about last year's transfer window together, haven't we, on this channel over the last year or so? And yeah, Cavani almost seemed to not come good by accident, but I don't think he was even brought in as first choice, was he? I think he was meant to be a rotation with Martial hopefully kicking on, and he sort of kind of, shocked us all a little bit. Speaking of midfielders then for United, another one that's been a hot topic over the summer is Jesse Lingard. Didn't really play for United for 18 months and then goes to West Ham and is one of the best players in the league. Where do you see him going next season? Do you think he'll be at United? Do you think he'll make a move elsewhere? And how do you see that sort of unfolding for Jesse Lingard?
I think because he's such a good player and a good squad player, and you saw what he could do at West Ham when he was motivated and trusted and put in the team. United will hold on to him. I think Paul Pogba, as we said earlier, will have an influence on that. I mean, they're slightly different players, but they're attacking midfield players. I think United will hold on to see, if Pogba was to go, then I think there's less likely that Lingard would go. They'd certainly hold on to him unless they could buy somebody else. But again, I think United were actually delighted at his form, just because they thought, right, we could get a good transfer fee for him. An England international approaching the peak of his career. I think Jesse had a wonderful peak, didn't he? Sort of 2017-18, great run, and then just a dreadful drought where we didn't score or assist even in the Premier League for such a long time. I think that would be a fairy tale, but I can't see Jesse Lingard being a first choice at United again. It would take a wrench for him to leave a club he's been at since 8 years old. But I think you could see how much he enjoyed West Ham and how happy he was there. I think he'd be willing to go. I certainly don't think he wants to come back and be a squad player or get 15, 20 minutes or be an unused player. So I think United, it's a pawn, isn't it? They're holding him back. That's if they need to raise money. If Pogba goes, we keep him until we get somebody else. If he doesn't, we've got 25, 30 million potential there. I know West Ham. My understanding is that West Ham, when they did the loan deal, wanted a fixed fee of 15 million to buy him, and United refused, which was actually, quite smart, because 15 million for Lingard would be cheap. I think he's worth 25 to 30 now when they saw what he could do. I don't see much of a future for Jesse Lingard next season at United.
Yeah, fair enough. It's weird with Jesse, isn't it? Because we all love Jesse Lingard, but it's easy to sort of forget that awful spell he had and just how bad it was going for him. It was great to see him sort of rejuvenate his career at West Ham. Just moving on to Solskjær, Sam. Obviously, someone you've watched as a player, covered as a journalist since he was a player, and now as a manager. Just long term, do you see Ollie being the right man for the job?
Big question.
Yeah, big question. I'll just throw that one in there. Nice easy one for you.
Because I'm not going to be a hypocrite and suggest anything otherwise. I have huge doubts about that still. I really do. I think he's been done really well. I know a Crystal Palace friend of mine, when I spoke to him, I doubted the appointment of Patrick Vieira with his background, and he said to me, I'd rather him than Ole Gunnar Solskjær. And I just thought, really, no. I mean, Solskjaer's done very well. This is a manager on his own, full seasons, that's navigated United to third and second and a Europa League final and plenty of semi-finals. I mean, he is a good manager. There's no doubt about that. He's proven that at United, whatever happens. You don't finish runners-up in the Premier League being a bad manager. And I think that, obviously he's at Manchester United, he's got their resources, he's got lots of players. He should be finishing in those sort of positions, but he is. You look at Arsenal and Arteta, and there was the Arteta-Lampard Solskjaer debate. Well, he's won that, and Arsenal finished, 8th, 10th? I mean, that's a disaster. Solskjaer's finishing second, and he's one penalty kick away from winning the Europa League. So I think he is a good manager. I've taught myself round, is he good enough to compete with Pep, Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp? I don't know. I think he's beaten these managers in one-off games. So he can do it in a one-off thing, which is a good sign. But can he win a league? Can he outwit Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola over the course of a season? there isn't any evidence to suggest that, is there? There's no, body of work. Last thing he won was the Norwegian Cup in 2013. I would be happier than anyone as a United fan, and obviously with the fairy tale and his playing career with United, that if he could do it, watch this space. We'll find out this season. But yeah, I do have my severe doubts that he does have that winner's mentality. And I think the Europa League was such a shame. The final, I know it was only penalties, but that was that obstacle, and we've seen, those of us who have seen the lucky enough to see the Ferguson era, the catalyst that a cup can become. United was built on cup wins in before titles, with Ferguson winning the FA Cup in 1990, European Cup Winners' Cup 91, the League Cup even in 92, and then, the domination of all those titles. Even later on in the second bit, winning the League Cup in 2006 led to 3 consecutive league titles. Winning a cup can act as such a catalyst. And I thought it was such a shame United didn't grasp that opportunity, because I think the mood would be so much more different if Solskjaer had a European trophy to show off. It was a test of his winner's mentality, and over 120 minutes, it was only a penalty, but I suppose he failed it because Villarreal was the 7th best team in La Liga. What an opponent to play in the final. This wasn't the Barcelona 2009 and 11 that Sir Alex Ferguson came up against. This was the 7th best team in La Liga, and United couldn't get past them, and that hasn't helped Solskjaer. So he has the platform. He has the platform to show he deserves it this season. With hopefully Varane, Sancho, he's certainly getting the back in this season, better than the last summer. So we shall see.
Just on that front about sort of trophies or the lack of trophies under Ole, how important do you think it is for him to win something this season? Do you think that's something, for example, that the owners will look at come the end of next season if we've not won anything? That could be an issue for him, or is it just a case of if we're still in the top 4 and we're still getting into the Champions League, they'd be okay with that?
I think the funny thing is, I think a competitive title race would be more important than a trophy. There's no point finishing 7th and winning the League Cup, beating Swansea in the final in February. That wouldn't be good enough, even though it'd be a trophy. Or I think a competitive, real title race. United, we forget really, and if you want to mark it against Solskjaer, United were top in January, properly top, not games in hand, properly top. You win your remaining games, you're champions. Now clearly that didn't happen, and it wasn't going to happen. It was January, but United were top, and people were like, hang on, this is a title race. This feels like a title race. We're actually in this, And United, I remember at the time, there was a Rashford's deflected last-minute winner over Christmas against Wolves, late winner against Fulham. United hadn't been playing well, but they'd been grabbing wins. And there was, are United about to be found out? They've not been playing that well, but they've been winning. Or are United building up momentum and they've been winning? But when they've not been playing well, it's the sign of a champion. Well, we found out, didn't we, that they weren't good enough to launch a title challenge, and that title challenge lasted for 2 or 3 weeks. I think if Solskjaer can finish 2nd or 3rd, but be in a title race in the 2 or 3 games to go, and then that's progress. That's real progress, So, obviously, if that was aligned with a Champions League or an FA Cup, hopefully not a Europa League, because that means going out of the group stages of the Champions League, then yeah, but I don't see an FA Cup and finishing 5th or 6th liable to save him. I really think, if Varane and Sancho are coming in aligned to a team that finished runners up, then you've really got to be trying to win the Premier League. This is no transitional season. This is all guns blazing. Let's go to it. And Glazers are criticised, and rightly so. But it would appear that if Varane and Sancho do get over the line, they are giving him the tools to push on.
Certainly this season. You mentioned Varane and Sancho there. Are there any other sort of targets that have gone under the radar a little bit? This is basically sort of any other transfers type part. What do you reckon is it? Because obviously we've been linked with Camavinga, Varane, Sancho, as you mentioned. Obviously that looks like it's done. Is there anyone else who sort of you think, well, if Pogba goes, this might happen, or other people? Trippier's another one that we've been linked with. Anyone else who's sort of on the radar, lurking around that we're maybe not quite aware of just yet?
The one name you mentioned there was Trippier. My understanding is United are, definitely interested. He's from the Northwest. He'd like to come back. United are interested in him. But I think this one won't be done quickly. And I think Atletico Madrid are holding out. I don't know the exact figures, but I think United would be willing to pay 10 million. They paid 12 or 15 for Telles, didn't they? 10, 12 million, and Atletico Madrid want 30 million or something. I think if United are not willing to pay that, especially when they already have a very good right back on the books already, I think that one will run and run. I think that will be, it's a game of chicken, cat and mouse, any sort of other cliche you want to use, that will go to the end, and then Atletico Madrid might go, okay, look, take him, give us 10 million. Because United won't pay the fee they want. They're happy to go without him. They're not going to spend a lot of money. I think there is a chance. I think there's a real chance. Again, my understanding is that it might just be Sancho and a centre back, which they want to be Varane. I think maybe Trippier towards the end, as I said, but I've been led to believe that this is not going to be a all guns blazing. It's a good start if it's Sancho and Varane, but it's right. Okay, what's next? It might stop it there. I think there's a good chance there. I think if Pogba goes, they'll definitely buy a midfielder. If he stays, they possibly won't. It could just be Sancho and Varane or a centre back. And I think as a football writer, but as a United fan, if they could get Sancho and Varane over lunch, that would be incredible. That would be fantastic. So, I think be grateful for that. There's always surprises. Of course, Cavani was offered, but turned up, and then it was a last minute, right, grab him last day of the thing. So there could possibly be other deals like that. But in terms of, real serious money, Sancho's 73 million. Varane will be 40 to 50. I don't think if Pogba stays, I don't think there'll be anybody in that bracket now.
So we mentioned about last summer about essentially, we not got lucky with Cavani because he's obviously a proven player, but he was like you said, almost a last minute thought that happened to make his way into the first team. No other real first team additions. This summer is more of a let's go less players, but the plan is they're going to start pretty much every game with Sancho, and if it is Varane. Do you think that would be enough for United to really push in terms of a title challenge? Because obviously we're saying about we need progress, we need to keep up, what we've been doing over the last couple of years in terms of improvement. But City are already a good chunk ahead of us. I think a fit Liverpool are still a good chunk ahead of United. Do you think like 2 first-team players is enough to make up that difference, or do you think that we're still maybe a couple of transfer windows behind them, assuming they don't, push on and improve their teams any further before we get there?
I think that what the worry from United, but it's something they obviously can't control, and if City have obviously spent so much money but never really gone for the blockbusters, I think their record is Laporte or 60-65 or Mahrez. If they in this summer pull the trigger twice with Grealish and Kane, and there's informed talk that they might be willing to do that, 100 million each, it does make you wince a bit. This City side plus Kane and Grealish, but so you don't know what you're up against in terms of the other squads. They'll all improve, of course, as well. In terms of United, no, I don't think Sanchez and Varane. Hopefully, Varane is enough. It's still a work in project. But if you finish runners up and then you end Sancho and Varane, you have to be challenging for the title. There's no doubt about that. But if you look across the side, I think England, United had 2 players in the Euro some people's Euro team of the tournament. Shaw and Maguire, you put Varane in there. Wan-Bissaka has his limitations going forward, but it's still impossible to get past, and a very good right back who might have some competition with Trippier, but we'll see. I think probably there are still areas of concern. I mean, the goalkeeper position, there's talk. I see I don't know personally, from the Manchester Evening News that Henderson will be the number one. I don't know myself. Obviously, De Gea finished the season. You would have, with the Europa League final, you thought, right, well, that's settled. He's been given the role for United's biggest game in 4 years, chance to deliver Solskjaer his first trophy at United. So you thought that was settled, but clearly De Gea's performance in the final, especially the penalty shootout, which was dreadful, opened up that debate again. So there's talk Henderson might start the season. Obviously, be interesting to see in the pre-season friendlies, but certainly against Leeds, what happens there. My feeling about the goalkeepers is, and it's probably the uncomfortable truth that maybe people don't want to face. Maybe both of them aren't up to the job. Maybe neither of them is good enough. And that's a concern, because United's great teams was obviously based on Peter Schmeichel, Edwin van der Sar, a goalkeeper. Nobody doubted their qualities for both of those. The younger De Gea, no one certainly did. And I think there was a flirtation with Donnarumma, obviously on a free. You'd be silly not to inquire. Raiola being his agent obviously didn't hope Matt's there. And I think there was a flirtation with Oblak last year. I think there's informed talk that, look, Solskjaer clearly harbours doubts about both of them. You saw that in how you treated. He doesn't know who his number one goalkeeper. So that's not a comfortable position for a manager or a club to be in, where I think if you gave him a magic wand and an unlimited checkbook, I think he would sign another keeper. I really do. But the platform is there for both of them. We'll see. And then obviously up front, the Harry Kane and Haaland, that's not happening this summer. Certainly not happening, my understanding. And I think common sense tells you, how United deal. If they're spending 150 million, 125 on Varane and Sancho, there's not enough. There's not another 100 million for either of those. I think the Cavani contract killed that off. Really, I thought their thinking was, look, we've got Cavani for another year. Martial coming back from injury. Sancho comes in. Greenwood, Rashford, Fernandes. Sorry. That's not an area we need to worry about. I think that when they can't control what happens with Kane. I think they're confident that Haaland won't go, and they might have a chance next summer when obviously his release fee is 75 million euros and more affordable. So yes, and I haven't even broached the midfield. I haven't even broached the midfield. So yeah, and there's talk of United wanting to be more attacking next year, not using Fred and McTominay as Solskjaer's sort of security blanket. I think it's a funny summer for United. They're delighted for Sancho and Varane if they happen, but some people have argued, and quite wisely so, that maybe an absolute top class defensive central midfielder was the priority. But I don't see that happening. So yeah, so there's still this isn't the 93-94 United side with no weakness and just sheer perfection that you couldn't pick apart. There are still problems within this team, but it certainly looks to be going to be stronger than last year.
Yeah, I think that's all. Unfortunately, that's all accurate.
Yep. And we've had that conversation about the goalies, haven't we, before, that maybe he doesn't actually like either of them that much. Because if he did, there's not. When Schmeichel was at United, there was no question who the first choice goalie was. Well, I've got two first choice goalies. Well, you haven't. It's Schmeichel. Yeah,
a nonsense. The two first choice goalkeepers thing. That just means the opposite.
It literally doesn't make sense, does it? Just by the laws of what a list is, you can't have two things first on a list.
Yeah, and it seems like he's changed his mind over the summer, because De Gea obviously was. Henderson came in and was okay, wasn't he? He was okay.
Yeah.
You thought, and there was the mistakes against Liverpool. This is the Manchester United #1 jersey. This is not for players who looked good on loan at Sheffield United. This is a big role. You know, some of the greatest goalkeepers to ever play the game have worn that jersey, and so, you know, and De Gea certainly lived up to them for many years. And I think that, you know, there's just doubts about both of them, and clearly he's changed his mind over the summer if Henderson is going to be the number one, because he finished it with De Gea. And I do think there has to. I think that, and the problem with De Gea is he's the highest paid goalkeeper in the world, and he doesn't play like that. Mm-hmm. And it was almost cruel how it happened, obviously, him missing the penalty. But he's now conceded 40 consecutive penalties. 40, 29 for club and country before the shootout. And then he conceded 11, and he didn't look like he was getting anywhere near them. And when you've got a goalkeeper who's the best paid goalkeeper in the world, who, when you're getting towards the penalty shootout, you're not thinking, yeah, no problem. Like Italy were with Donnarumma in the final. They were like, okay, bring penalties on. Have you seen who we've got in goal? And England would have been confident with Pickford. He's a good penalty saver. But United just got more and more unconfident because they knew who was having tasked to save the penalty. And even, thinking of bringing Henderson on for the penalties. Now, if that's your number one goalkeeper, you don't trust him to save penalties, and he's the highest paid goalkeeper in the world, there's a problem there. The funny thing is, Peter Schmeichel actually wasn't that great with penalties. I don't remember too many penalty saves from him. But clearly the doubts around De Gea haven't gone away. And I don't know what you think, but Henderson looks a good, keeper for maybe a top 10 Premier League side. But is he a United goalkeeper? I haven't seen it yet.
We're constantly having this debate on the channel, Sam, because a lot of us are like you, thinking you've got keepers who, have the positive traits, and Henderson, is probably a bit more commanding of his area. De Gea usually is a better shot stopper, but are they good enough for a title win?
40 penalties conceded in a row. I think, is astonishing.
I think I could save a penalty.
I think
by guessing, just by luck.
If you blindfolded him and just said dive the same way every time, he'd save 1 in 40.
That's I think that takes a talent.
Yeah.
To not save 40 penalties is quite remarkable.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm with you on that one. I don't blame him for missing a penalty.
No,
that's obviously not his. But we wouldn't have got there if he'd have saved.
I think penalties are only like 0.7 of them go in. Yeah. So unless against him, obviously, I'm sure a few have been put wide in that time. But that's got to be like over 90% of penalties he faces, he lets in.
It's like, Sam, you made the point earlier about Pogba's season where he scored a lot of goals, a lot of them were penalties. His penalty scoring ratio was only like average.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he scored he wasn't a Bruno.
No.
He scored something like 8 out of 11 penalties, which is kind of what you'd expect.
De Gea is the sort of inverse Bruno of goalkeepers, isn't he? Yeah. Where Bruno scores 95%, he concedes 95%.
Sam, it's been great chatting to you, especially because not only a journalist, as a United fan as well, I know a lot of what you talk of comes from the heart. We'll have to have another catch up, hopefully, when the season kicks off, and see whether we have a title challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sam, good stuff. Thanks again.
Cheers, guys. No problem.
Thank you. Cheers. Right, so that was Sam Pilger, writer for Forbes, 442, The Athletic, amongst others.
Obviously, United books as well. He's written quite a few United books.
Very well clued in. You could see that. He used one of my favourite terms. My understanding is, I like it when people use that term because it's like, he spoke to someone. I like that. I wish I could say that one day. My understanding is, I'll be having a Greggs for dinner. Yeah, but that's based on very good knowledge. Monday, Greggs. Tuesday, Greggs. Wednesday, let's have a Greggs. Thank you again to Sam for coming on. Really good to chat to him. I think he sort of... I wanted him to go, we're signing Messi. But I like the thing with Sam is, and we spoke to him a few times, and I had a good sit-down interview with him once in London about a couple of years ago when we were full-time Devils. There's 2 things I like about him. One, he's a United fan. Yeah. And 2, he has got sources, and obviously he's quite reputable, but he doesn't make stuff up or go, Kane could happen. Yeah. He knows it's not going to, and he said that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I'd rather that than come out here and say, Kane, you never know. I do know it's not going to happen. That's very much the sort of modern way of dealing with transfers, isn't it? I think over, up until the internet came around, social media came around, papers could just say what they wanted, couldn't they? Basically, it's happening. It's like, it's not happening, is it? Whereas now, I think people, especially the people like Sam, know. Just say what is happening, and people will prefer that people prefer to be reliable than they are to hear what they want to hear. So yeah, really good speaking, Sam, and great knowledge as always.
As always, it's been great having you on the Tier 1 Transfer
Thank you very
podcast
much,
as well.
Jay. It's been great to be back. Sorry, Ronaldo, for taking your seat, but you can come back whenever you want to, of course.
Yeah, it'd be nice if you came back now again, Ronaldo. Actually, it's your own fault. You missed Romano, now you missed Sam Pilger.
Yeah,
so don't expect any sympathy. Make sure you go check out Sam's work over on Forbes and FourFourTwo and The Athletic. And
follow him on Twitter as well.
Follow him on Twitter.
Always
he's always a good follow.
Yeah.
You know where to find Joe Smith. Joe Smith 93.
Yes,
I believe
on Twitter and Instagram.
On the IG. You know where to find me as
nice
well.
One, Grandad.
Make sure
on the online superhighway,
on the intranet,
the web.
Make sure as well you're subscribing to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you're getting those notifications when we go live
and when every video gets uploaded as well.
Yeah, sorry, I should add that.
Yeah,
but we will be giving you all the updates during the transfer window and beyond. What we've got coming up as well? Watch along season is upon us.
Watch along season, pre-season. We've got a game this weekend against QPR. That's going to be very exciting.
Rangers.
Very well done. Have you into football, are you?
Yeah, it's alright.
I'll get you a football card for your birthday with a player playing football in watercolours. I love all that. Like Nan's buy. QPR watch along coming up this weekend. Make sure you check that out.
I've been Jay Motti. That's been Joe Smith. That was Sam Pilger. This has been the Tier 1 Transfer Podcast for Stretford Paddock. Thanks for watching.